my conservative friends. Today we want to talk a little bit about something that doesn't come up too often in these days, but it's the lessons that we learned from the Articles of the Confederation. Now, the Articles, let's do a little background first. The Articles of Confederation were a precursor to our U.S. Constitution, and it was the first document ratified by, the 13 states that was designed to start the process of figuring out how our federal government would operate and what powers it would have. It became effective on March 1st, 1781, and if you want to read the history, there's some discussion about why it wasn't ratified immediately, and what states were dragging their feet. And that's all interesting, but it's not really pertinent to what we're talking about today. But here are some of the problems that document had. First of all, it didn't give any power to the federal government to levy taxes. And I know none of us likes the idea of taxes, but the reality is if there is going to be any form of central government, there has to be some form of taxation so that government has the power to operate. And think about it, the military is a great example. You can't have any kind of national defense military if you don't have the dollars to support that. So that was one thing that was not in place with the Articles of Confederation. There wasn't a federal power to enforce any laws. There was only one governing body, and that was the unicameral Congress. So there were no checks and balances in place as came with the Constitution, where we now have a three-pronged government. We only had one prong, the Congress, and whatever authority was granted was all granted to that one body. There was no executive and no judiciary, and they couldn't regulate commerce. So what lessons came out of that part of our governance in the United States? I think the first one is that some centralization is definitely necessary. If we're going to be a conglomerate of states working together, then of course there has to be something that binds us together, both in identity, in policy, and in function. And so for a group of independent states to operate effectively, we need some centralization. The key there, and we'll probably cover this many times, is how much centralization is safe and effective for a country. I think right now we're all experiencing some issues with too much centralization of power and even product when you look at our supply chain issues. But there are examples, here are some of the examples, when it's actually in the best interest of the independent states to have some consistency on these things. And the first one is taxation. This was a big part of why the Constitutional Convention was called, is because they could never pass any legislation to allow the federal government under the Articles of Confederation to levy taxes. And like I said at the beginning, if you want to have a federal government, if you want to have that central power that connects all the states, they do have to have some dollars to function. So that was one of the points that really does make it in the best interest to give our federal government some authority and power. Here's another one, and that is governing commerce between and among states. It's more efficient, it's more fair and just if there are some overarching laws that allow commerce to be managed in a fair and equitable way among the states, and then, of course, internationally. Foreign relations. Just imagine if all of the states of the United States were trying to independently navigate foreign relations. It would be really difficult, totally not workable over an extended period of time. So again, that's another place where it's in the best interests of the states to have a federal government managing those issues. And then, of course, military and war powers. You want a strong national defense. You want somebody managing that and providing for a strong national defense with funds that the citizens have provided. So I have a question for you. I always try and end with a question, give you something to think about, and definitely something to respond if you want to. Do you think the Confederation of States would have continued if the Constitutional Convention had not been called and we had not had a successful result from that Constitutional Convention? I have some questions in my mind as to what would have happened, and I bet you do too. We might look a lot more like Europe if we had not come to that point of agreement and created a constitution. So share your thoughts. We are so happy to have you here with us on YO Conservative. We ask you to just stay faithful, watch the videos, consume our content, and give us your opinions too. Take care.